Welcome to the Speak Your Piece podcast. My name is Ian McNaughton, Big E, as some people like to call me, and this is part three of our 2026 NFL season preview. If you haven't already, we've dropped our last two episodes on Wednesdays. Last week's episode was on the most impactful players that I think we'll see in 2026. And then the week before, the first preview of the series was on the biggest movers and the biggest changes in the off season. So, if you haven't already, go check that out. You can check that out on our YouTube channel. You can go check that out on Spotify, Apple Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Uh, Basically, just search up Speak Your Piece Podcast or SYP Pod, and you'll find myself. You'll find this guy here, talking football. Today, part three, as part of our, I think it's 7-part series, 6-part series we're doing, discussing mostly NFL. I think there's one week I'm doing a college football preview, so be on the lookout for that. But it's football, mostly NFL, a little bit of college. Then today, we're gonna have the top 10 most impactful coaches that we'll see this year. I'm going to call it the 10 most impactful coaches this year in the 2026 NFL season. Now, there's obviously more coaches that will impact the league. I really just wanted to have a reason to discuss Mike McDonald for a hot minute because I haven't really talked much Seahawks or McDonald or any of the players so far in the first two previews, which I don't know if that's totally surprising. The Seahawks didn't make many changes in the offseason, and they have some impact guys, but I don't know if all of the Seattle really plays well as a team. I don't know that there's one individual guy who will stand out above the rest. So, with that said, we're going to talk a little Seahawks today as well, which I'm really looking forward to. But today I have the top 10 most impactful coaches this upcoming season. Um, a lot of the names aren't surprising. They won't be surprising to you. I've talked about some of these guys before already, so I probably won't go too deep into my thought too deep on my thoughts on them, but I at least wanted to recognize some guys. Some guys deserve credit. Some guys I'm very just curious how their situation goes. Basically, again, like I kind of said last week, of impactful can be good impactful, like impactful complimentary, but also impactful derogatory. I talked about that last week with Jeremiah Love and the Arizona Cardinals, where I think he's going to impact this season. I just don't know that the Cardinals are going to be impactful this season. He's going to impact the Cardinals, but it might not all be for the good, I guess. Especially if I think the Cardinals are going to be really bad this year. And I don't have Mike LaFleur as an impactful coach this year because I just don't think he's an impactful coach. So, with that being said, this list I will say is not necessarily a 1 through 10. Like, for complete transparency, I don't know that Andy Reid is going to be the sixth most impactful coach in the NFL this year. I have 10 guys. These are 10 guys that I'm most interested in. These are 10 guys that I think we'll be talking about a lot this upcoming season. So take it for, for what it's worth. It's not, again, it's not meant to be anything more than just like I think these are the top 10 guys. I think there are some guys who are definitely going to be a little bit more impactful. The McDonalds, the McVays, the Ben Johnsons. Like I think those guys for sure. But I mean, after like maybe like coach number 4 from like 5 to 10, it's toss up. You can put it in any order you want. So with that being said, here's who I think for sure. My number one. I'm a little biased because I'm a Seahawks fan. Here's who I think is going to be the number one most impactful coach in the 2026 NFL season. I'm going to start with Mike McDonald, Seahawks coach. He's entering his third year with Seattle. He's coming off a season where he coached a top 10 team all time by DVOA. And that's the third best team among Super Bowl winners. Again, this is by DVOA. So the nerds love this stuff. The analytical guys love this stuff. You might not think the Seahawks were a top 10 team of all time last year. They were really good. They were really good. The only other teams, according to DVOA, to be considered amongst the top 10 all time were the 91 Washington team and the 85 Bears. That's a pretty darn good list of, you know, teams to be in with, considering those teams won the Super Bowl. Those guys had weapons all over the place. I am surprised at how many people. I shouldn't say I'm surprised. I'm not totally surprised. I'm a little surprised, maybe not totally surprised, how little the Seahawks are being talked about coming into this upcoming season. I don't know if, like, from the outside perspective, as we just assume, like, people just who aren't Seahawks fans just assume these guys are going to be good again, or they just don't think Seattle's going to repeat. I mean, both of those are possible. Seattle had quite a bit of luck winning the Super Bowl. They were extremely healthy, had things go their way, like a lot of dice roll their way in the last stretch of the season. But this Seahawks team is really good. This team is impressive. You know, there are some losses, I will say. Tariq Woolen, he's in Philadelphia. Boya Mafe, he's in Cincinnati. Kobe Bryant, who is going to be missing, I think, the first half of the season, he's in Chicago. But I like the add-ons. Like I like bringing in Dante Fowler, formerly of Jacksonville and Dallas. He's going to be a new pass rusher. He's basically going to replace Mafe. They brought in Bud Clark, who was their first round pick, second round pick. I think it was the first round pick. They brought in Bud Clark, who, from everything we've seen at training camp, he's a Mike McDonald kind of Nick Even Worry type. Maybe not even Worry, considering how well he did in his first year, but he's a guy who's got versatility that they can play him all over, safety, nickel, wherever. And then Julian Neal is a cornerback they got from Arkansas, I believe in the second round, third round. The hope is that he can be the Woolen replacement. I don't know. Again, it sounds like from what I've seen at training camp, this guy can either hang with the best of them. He's also, maybe going to be a bench player in his first season. He might be just a special teamer. We don't know. It's still early on. And again, considering how good the Seahawks offense is and how well they can scheme guys up, not easy for a third round, mid round pick from Arkansas to just get thrown into the mix and expect to do well. So I do like those guys though. Like I think they have an identity. I think they have a process that they go through. And Mike McDonald, works well with John Schneider to identify guys that he wants on his defense and guys that he thinks can not only play and play right away, but play effectively and can give them quality reps right away. I will say it's never easy to trying to repeat. I think that's obvious. That's a cliche thing. You know, it's easier getting to the top than it is staying at the top. Uh, but I think the stuff that McDonald and the guys did last season it gives me optimism that they're still ahead. The league hasn't caught up to them yet. The stuff that they were pulling against New England in the Super Bowl is maybe the biggest indicator for me, where Josh McDaniels, Patriots OC, and Drake May just were not ready. They could not keep up with the Seahawks defense and the pressures that they were throwing at them. Um, the blitzes. Like the Seahawks were now. I know one game shouldn't be a tell all, but the fact that the Seahawks were dominating a Super Bowl with a four-man rush, and then every once in a while you sprinkle in here's a Devon Witherspoon, blitz, or here's even War like the Seahawks did a tremendous job last year of calling plays and calling their shots. And I think, well, it's not that Super Bowl is not going to be, indicative of how they play every game. I do think that's a great indicator of how far ahead they are defensively. Like I don't think anybody is doing the stuff that the Seahawks are doing defensively. Like maybe the Eagles. with Fangio. You get some Fangio stuff in there, and it's nasty. You get some Brian Flores stuff. Brian Flores, I believe he's still in Minnesota. Uh, he's a defensive coordinator, and he just blitzes the shit out of you. Like that's some good stuff. That's some good stuff. But nobody is doing the coverage, the masking, the hiding, the dummy stuff that the Seahawks are doing, and that stuff doesn't last forever. Very rarely does that stuff last forever. I'm hopeful and optimistic that the Seahawks can, make this happen over a long period of time. But it also worked last year because they, blended so well with the offense. Like there was such great cohesion between the offense and the defense last year for the Seahawks that it all just blended in. It all just worked well. Hopefully we'll get that again this year. I'm excited for that. I'm optimistic. Um, McDonald brought in Brian Fleury. He was the former tight ends coach for the 49ers to be the new offensive coordinator for Seattle. Again, Clint Kubiak went to Vegas to coach the Raiders. Again, so far it seems like things are going well. It seems like, there's not a ton of fall off from last season. I think it's fair to expect a little bit of fall off, but I think you can also expect this team to be in the hunt for the division, for the playoffs, assuming everybody's healthy. That I think is huge, and I think a large part of that has to be, you know, credited to Mike McDonald and how well he has a structured his team, uh, built an outstanding defense, and has just provided such a culture change in the last 3 years compared to when Pete was here. So that's why I think you have to say that the most impactful coach this year is the guy that just won the Super Bowl and is very innovative and seems to be a step ahead of some of these other guys. I think even if I wasn't a Seahawks fan, I like to think I would still see that and recognize that. But it's also hard not to talk about this next coach who his team lost in the NFC Championship game, and that is Sean McVay. Sean McVay is in his 10th year with the LA Rams. He has been coaching the Rams since I was in high school. I remember, I think I was in grade 11 geology, I think is what it was. I remember getting a notification on my phone that the Rams hired Sean McVay, and I was like, who the hell is this guy? Like, how's this going to work? And it's worked about as well as any coaching hire in the league ever. Uh, Obviously, the Rams have revenge on the mind with how last season ended, and this whole offseason has been kind of this weird, like chip on their shoulder, kind of, you know, we can't let last season happen again. And that's what I love about being a Seahawks fan is I love that both the Niners and the Rams are so pissed that the Seahawks won. That's just beautiful to me. There's something magical about that. Is being the team that your rivals are disgusted that you won. Being the champion and your division rivals are just fuming. That's beautiful. That's what sports is all about. That's some real love of the game, you know, kind of stuff right there. It doesn't get any better than that. But really, the Rams, they don't need to change much. Obviously, I've talked about them bringing in Miles Garrett a couple times. They've brought in Cliff Kingsbury to be the assistant head coach. He's not going to be the offensive coordinator, so I don't know exactly what his role is. I probably could do a Google search and find out. But Cliff Kingsbury, former Arizona head coach, former Washington offensive coordinator, now the assistant head coach with the Rams. So we'll see how that goes. No idea how he fits in or what he adds to this group, but it's a curious addition for sure. Uh, and the second place schedule presumably will help the Rams compared to the first place schedule that Seattle has to play this year. But again, you know, the Rams don't play the Seahawks until Christmas Day. Like that's the next time these guys meet. Like 5 months from now. It's a long time. There's a lot of ball to be played between now and then. So anything is possible. anything can happen. So who knows with the Rams? I mean, again, you assume that they're going to win 10 games plus this year. They're going to be, competing for the division. You assume that the Garrett trade is going to work out. You assume Stafford can be healthy for another year, which if not, then that's a real problem. But, you know, it's there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions I think with the Rams. I don't think we should all just be assuming that they're gonna win the Super Bowl. And I don't know that most people are. I think they're the favorites. Everybody likes them to win the Super Bowl, which is fine. We people can doubt on Seattle again. But again, if we're talking about, shit happening, if Matt Stafford is hurt, is Ty Simpson ready to take the job? The guy who they just drafted in the first round this year? The training camp results look very come see, come saw. Stetson Bennett is going to be the guy leading this team? I don't think so. So I think that's where obviously we don't talk about injuries because this is the NFL. Anybody can get injured. You go talk with Packer fans last year with how many injuries impacted the end of their season. Nightmare for them. They thought they were the shit. They thought they could be a top team. It The injuries didn't help. I kind of worry about that with the Rams a little bit. Little older team. Who knows? I want to throw that out there. McVay will figure it out. McVay will make the most of it. He will find a way. He's again good coach, strong coach. He'll figure it out. But yeah, he's gonna have an impact this season. Sean McVay is, whether he's you know trying to do the new thing of like got last year everybody was doing 13 personnel with three tight ends. While teams are gonna be doing that this year, he's probably gonna be doing something else. Like that's just the nature of the beast. So Sean McVay, he's gonna be the second most impactful coach, one of the most impactful coaches. Rounding out my top three is the third NFC West coach that is I think he's the third I think he's the third best coach in the NFC West. I'll say it like that. Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan's also in his 10th year with the 49ers. He is in his Jim Harbaugh curmudgeon era. You remember how and maybe this was just Harbaugh the whole time, but by the end of Harbaugh coaching the 49ers, he was so just feisty and everything sucked and everything was a problem and this was bad and that was bad and just this is against us, this is going against us, and it just shadowed over how the rest of the team was doing. It just created this cloud over all the stuff that the team is doing, and it's not like the Niners are a bad team. Like I know everybody is injured in San Francisco. I understand that. Shout out the substation. The substation in Santa Clara should be getting a Super Bowl ring for its contributions. But I just see a lot of the end of the Harbaugh era in San Francisco right now with Kyle Shanahan. I'm not saying that Kyle Shanahan is has the potential to lose his job or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm not sure that Shanahan's going to go find another job somewhere else. Maybe there's some team who's going to give him $20 million a year and he's going to go take a new job. I'm not saying any of that. I don't know that any of that's true. It just feels like there is more nonsense being discussed amongst the 49ers than the football. And that's when it becomes a serious problematic issue that if you can turn that around, if you can, you know, do a whole 180 on, the public outcry and the PR that you have going on, if you can do that, great. If not, it's going to be a long season for you. Yeah, I like this feels like a season that could be the beginning of the end if it goes poorly. Is what I have written down here. That feels about right. This could be the start of the end for Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers if it goes poorly. If it goes as badly as I think it might go, I could see this being the end for Shanahan and the Niners. Their drafting has been a bit underwhelming. They haven't really found replacements for the well, Brandon Ayuk, and they brought back Debo Samuel, so they haven't really replaced those guys due to draft. And at some point, they'll need to replace Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Trent Williams. Those guys are all getting older. Those guys have all been dealing with injuries. At some point, you need to replace them. You need to find new versions of that. And that's not easy. In fact, for San Francisco, a lot of like they traded for McCaffrey, they traded for Trent Williams, they drafted George Kittle. So they are historically an aggressive trade free agent team, kind of like the 40, kind of like the Rams, but the Rams have really like doubled down on it, and the 49ers haven't. They've made, contract commitments that limits what they can do. So this is this is kind of what you get with the 49ers. I'm not sure how they finish better than third in the NFC West, barring injuries, and their fate feels like another road playoff loss. Like that's how I just feel like this season is gonna play out for them. They're not a high level explosive team. I don't think they are like the Rams and the Seahawks. I don't see them being like that. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I mean, I don't want to be proven wrong. I want the Niners to lose and lose every game. But considering how that season ended for them last year, they just had no answers for the Seahawks defense. And they had no answers for the Seahawks offense. Like, but, it's one thing if you're getting into a shootout. Like you saw that in the NFC Championship game. It's one thing if you're kind of in a shootout, you're going back and forth, each possession matters. The Niners lost the NFC divisional game off the opening kickoff. Like Shaheed ran that touchdown back, the 7 points Seattle got on that, you know, first possession, that's all they needed. The Niners had no answer on offense for Mike McDonald and the Seahawks. And they really haven't since, mm, I don't know. The Niners beat the Seahawks in the opening game last year, and that was thankfully, the worst thing that really happened to the Seahawks last year. Everything after that was peaches and cream. But it took Nick Bosa to you know cause a fumble inside the red zone. Seattle was driving; they were gonna score, but they didn't. So, anyways, that's kind of my thing with the Niners. I'm just curious with the Niners, what can Shanahan do differently this year with Purdy and company? Like what's the twist? What's the zag that you're doing this year, Kyle Shanahan? Are you going to be running the ball more? Are you going to be passing the ball more? Are you going to be lining up with a 13 personnel? Are you going to be lining up in 22 person? Like what's your thing that you're going to do this year that the teams are not expecting and are not ready for, and you're going to just ride it until you can't anymore? That's what I'm most curious with the 49ers. That's what I'm most curious in Kyle Shanahan. Like, does he have something up his sleeve? The other coaches in your division, the top coaches they showed it last year, and you haven't. So you are behind the times. And if people think you're still a good coach. If you think you're in the elite with them, you got to bring something else to the table. You got to show off something else that you know gets your team not just into the playoffs, so you can go lose to the freaking Cowboys in the first round. Like you gotta have something different this time around. But we'll see. Next coach I want to discuss is Ben Johnson. He's in his second year with the Bears. He is the how do I say this? The offensive genius, which listen, the bar is very low in Chicago for uh offensive minded coaches with success. Looking at you, Mark Trestman. Looking at you, Matt Nagy. The real question is, can he have the same success as Mike McDonald in year two? So, really good year for the Bears last year. They won a playoff game at home against the Packers. They almost possibly could have beat the Rams. That was a weird game. The Bears enter this year with some roster turnover, but it's not just, I mean, it is about winning a Super Bowl. That's what it is at the end of the day. But I compare Ben Johnson to Mike McDonald because there's a lot of talk about how this guy can build a transformative offense. He's now had an off season to put it all together, I guess, or to scheme and plan it a little bit better. He's had to make some changes. There's no DJ Moore. There's some young receivers on this team for sure. But can Ben Johnson create this transformative offense that takes over the league? I don't know that he can, but I think that's kind of the pressure and that's kind of the expectations that have been put on him for better or for worse, especially with Caleb Williams at quarterback. I'm curious to see if Ben Johnson and the Bears can the expectation that they're a top five, top three offense, I think, this year. I think the way people talk about him, and maybe it's just the people I'm friends with, the way the media hypes up Ben Johnson, like a lot of people think this is the year the Bears take another step on offense and they hit the ground running and it's a machine that hardly anybody can stop. I don't know, maybe that's what I think we're talking about here if you're the Bears. You know, they've done a great job of giving Ben Johnson weapons on offense. You have DeAndre Swift at running back, Kyle Monangai, Rashawn Johnson. You know, your wide receivers this year are Dunze, Luther Burden. They brought in Khalif Raymond from Detroit, so there's obviously the Ben Johnson, Khalif Raymond connection from their time together with the Lions. Um, they just drafted Thomas this year at wide receivers. So there's like four guys. They're I don't want to say they're um Packersing their wide receiver group because I think Dunze and Burden are both pretty good. Like I think they're a lot better than what the Packers were trying to throw out there, if that makes sense. Although Matthew Golden might be good this year, not the point. And then they got their tight ends. They got Colston Loveland, they got Cole Kmet, they got their tight ends. So if they want to line up in 12 personnel, they can. If they want to line up in 13 personnel, get another tight end out there, go for it. Um, you know, if the defense can hold their end, I think they'll be extremely exciting to watch. I think this is a you know really solid team. I think the offense is solid. Like I think they have some guys, but I think this is also part of the deal is Ben Johnson gets the most out of your guys. Like I think he gets more. The Bears should be greater than the sum of their parts. I think that's because we all like the coaching. We think the coaching's legit. We think the coaching can do that. And I think they should be Super Bowl contenders. I'm I try and look at a team in the best light. I know I just shit talked the 49ers for a hot minute, but I think there's at least the momentum and the vibes in Chicago give that should give you hope. That should give you optimism that this team could be competing for a Super Bowl this year, where I don't see that as much with San Francisco. But who's to say? But yeah, I think Ben Johnson will have a real impact this year, coaching the Bears, seeing if he can create this transformative offense, if he can be a stud play caller. Caleb Williams, can he be a 5,000 yard passer? 5,000 yard passer, all that sort of jazz. We'll see. Next on my list, I have Joe Brady as someone who's going to be one of the most impactful coaches in the NFL this year. This is his first year with the Bills as head coach. He was the offensive coordinator in Buffalo from 2024 to 2025. He was the offensive coordinator in Carolina from 2020 to 2021. Again, best known for being the LSU pass game coordinator and receivers coach in that 2020 national championship team with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. You know the rest. Um, I think the goal with Buffalo or at least the Bills is trying to make the offense more consistent. And I mean, it's not to say that it wasn't Joe Brady's offense in the past. He's been the offensive coordinator for last two seasons. It's kind of been his offense. But if they can have more consistency, um, a better balance, I think a bit more of a run game. You listen, you have Josh Allen, so you want to get the most out of Josh Allen, but you also want to be able to save Josh Allen come the postseason. If he can take fewer hits, If he can alleviate some of the pressure on him. I know the Bills aren't necessarily poised to be this huge, like, hey, we're going to run the ball 20, 30 times a game. I don't think that's who they are and who they want to be. But I think there is something to be said for, making it consistent, giving Josh all the help he can get, and making him the best quarterback he can be. If it works, like they have a top five offense and Allen is an MVP, then they're going to the Super Bowl. That's just how this is. I think the defense has enough. I trying to think. I forgot who they're. Oh, they brought in Jim Leonard, who I actually like Jim Leonard. He used to be at Wisconsin. I actually think he could be a fun defensive coordinator. Can scheme up a bunch of different stuff. I think he'll actually be a good fit in Buffalo. I think this team. I talked about them a little bit last week. I think with the Bills, there's a lot of pressure. If not now, then when? All that sort of jazz. I think Joe Brady can do it. I think he can be the guy. We'll see. We'll see. I didn't love firing McDermott to bring him in, but again, this might also just be a vibes change. Like they just might need to change the vibes in the organization in the locker room, and this is essentially what it is. Like that might add quite a bit for the Bills, just having a new guy coaching them, just having somebody else in charge compared to Sean McDermott. So, you know, better matchups post bye is another thing I have written down here for the Bills. Like pre bye week, they are at Houston, they host Detroit, they host the Chargers, they host New England, they're at the Rams. Some tough matchups there to start the year, including, Lions, Chargers, Pats in the new stadium. Post bye week, they're at Minnesota. They play the Jets twice. They play the Dolphins twice. Depending on how KC is doing, maybe KC is similar to last year. That might be an easy matchup. I don't know. I just think, if the Bills aren't strong out of the gate, don't fret. Don't give up on them. I think there's still a lot of time for the Bills to kind of figure out who they are and what they want to be and how they can go and beat teams. So Joe Brady, he's definitely gonna be one of the most impactful coaches this year in the NFL. Speaking of AFC coaches, I'm gonna discuss Andy Reid. This is his 14th season with Kansas City. Coming off his worst season as head coach since joining the Chiefs, the question is how do they bounce back? They added Kenneth Walker at running back. They brought in Justin Fields as a backup quarterback. Depending on if Mahomes is healthy or not, whether that's just at the beginning of the season or all season, who knows? You know, again, it's a huge question of can the core guys stay healthy and run it back? The Mahomeses, the Kelseys, even Andy Reid himself. Can Andy Reid stay healthy for a full season? This guy's, late 60s, he's getting almost into his 70s. Turned 68 in March. Like he's no spring chicken. He's been coaching NFL teams for 25 plus years now. Like that takes a toll on you. I I'm I'm more worried about this team's health than maybe anybody else's besides San Francisco. These guys, not only do they need to stay healthy, they need to stay at a certain level of production. They need to be productive at a certain level to be considered a Super Bowl team, to get back to where they were. And I don't know that they can. I almost need to see it to believe it with the Chiefs. I like that they brought in Walker. I like that they brought in a running back. Again, I talked about Kenneth Walker last week. He'll take some of the pressure off Mahomes or whoever's at quarterback. I like the idea of the Chiefs having a run game. I think that provides balance, and I know that Andy Reid is not a running first coach. I talked about it a little bit last week, but just in one season, all time, Andy Reid was top 10 in rushing attempts. Just one season all time. That was with the Eagles in 2002. I think that was the Brian Westbrook maybe Super Bowl team, possibly. Um, I suspect they're going to be around 20th in rushing attempts again to take some of the pressure off, which listen, I think 20 rushing, 20th in rushing attempts is probably better than 25 or 28. I'd like to see that number, I think, go up a little bit more, maybe into like the high, like the high teens, like between 15 to 20. I like to see them run the ball like 15 to 20th in the league compared to like 20th to 25. That's kind of my thing, especially this year with the injury. Now, if Mahomes comes back and he looks like old Mahomes, then just let it fly, man. Just throw the ball all around. But they're gonna need to run the ball for the sake of running the ball. I just don't see, again, unless Mahomes is Mahomes right out of the gate, they're going to need to run the ball. They're going to need to, you know, be versatile. They're going to need to do multiple things. And that's where Andy Reid comes in of I shouldn't say not just Andy Reid, but Eric Bieniemy is back as the OC. That's where those two guys need to come together and work together to scheme up not just some, quality pass concepts, but quality run concepts. Can they, find effective ways to run the ball in between the tackles, on the outside, you know, sometimes it's going to be for 3 yards. It's not going to be for a ton or 2 yards, but can you do enough to mix it in to give Walker enough reps to make it worthwhile, but also to take some of that load off the Mahomes. It's why I think Andy Reid will be one of the most impactful coaches this season. He's either going to make running the ball a thing or it's not going to be a thing. Sticking in the AFC West, I have Sean Payton. Sean Payton is in his fourth season with Denver. He is working with arguably the most balanced roster, especially like in the league, because especially compared to when he first took over the job and fucking Russell Wilson was on the team. But can he get another level out of Bo Nix? That's the biggest question I think facing the Broncos this year. I think they have a lot of talent. I think they have a lot of quality guys at a bunch of different positions. But if we're getting the same Bo Nix, that's going to be a problem. Bo Nix had the most pass attempts of any quarterback last season. He passed the ball. He attempted to pass the ball 612 times, but is 26 and coming off a broken ankle. He broke it in the AFC Championship game last year. I think Nix. You know, there's a lot of questions with him. He kind of got you know pigeonholed into just this guy who wasn't comfortable. If he didn't like his first read, he'd take off. There needs to be a step up for Bo Nix. Their division also got better. Like Kansas City, I think on paper is better. I think the Chargers are better. I think the Raiders are better. But I don't think the Broncos got any worse. I just think this team is too good. The Broncos are too good right now for Bo Nix to be the same guy and to not show any growth or show any improvement. And he needs to show some improvement. Like if he can go from being the 20th best quarterback, 25th best quarterback to like the 15th best quarterback, the 13th, that's huge. That's huge for the program. And as you saw last year, over 600 passing attempts. Payne's not afraid to throw the ball. He's not afraid to trust his guys. But you like you got to cut down on turnovers. You got to find your open mans, find the open concepts, find the right reads. As much as that is on Sean Payton to scheme that up, it's also on Bo Nix to make the plays happen himself. Bo Nix can get given the keys to the car, somebody shows him how to drive it, all this stuff. But if he can't park it, then what are we doing here? Yeah. And if Bo Nix has a poor season, Payton's not going to be afraid to move on at quarterback. He's not going to be afraid to go get a new guy to get a different quarterback, whether that's drafting another one next year or finding one in free agency, trade, who knows. But it's why it starts with, does Sean Payton give Bo Nix the goods? That's why I think Sean Payton's going to be one of the most impactful coaches this year. Can he scheme stuff up? Can he create, can he create the goods? Can he make good on giving Bo Nix opportunities to succeed? It's then on Bo Nix to go succeed, but can Sean Payton give the gifts for Bo Nix? Can can the scheme and the plays work so that Bo make it work? I guess is how I would put that. So, we're gonna stick in the AFC for another head coach, D'Amico Ryans. He is in his fourth season with Houston. He's maybe the most underrated head coach in the league, I think. Question mark? Maybe. Their defense was so good in 2025. A legitimate serious defense. I can't remember if I talked about it last week. Of man, the Texans like felt very similar to the Seahawks, but they had no offense. The offense could not get its shit together. And, his defense is one of the league's best. The offense this year looks again like a typical Texas offense with a great quarterback. The O line stinks, and it should be better than it is. I don't know that it got better. It got better this offseason. They added David Montgomery at running back, which cool. I guess you got a running back, but it's pretty tough to run the ball when you don't have a good O line, and the Texans don't have a good O line. In fact, they traded. I think it was a Tyus Howard. They traded one of their O linemen to get David Montgomery. Their O line was already bad, you needed to improve upon it, and instead you're like, let's trade like a decent guy on our line for a running back. And it's like, okay, not saying that the running back isn't important, but the running back is the whipped cream on the offense. If you don't have the cake to put the whipped cream on, if you don't have the offensive line to run the ball around, to create holes and to block guys, then it's useless. Then you don't have a cake. Then the whipped cream serves no purpose. You just have whipped cream. And whipped cream on itself is fine, but it's better on a cake. I wish the Texans understood this. This has been such a uh hilarious episode of roster building because the Texans defense kicks so much ass with Derek Stingley, Will Anderson, Aziz Al-Shahir, like so many talented guys on that defense. And the offense, it's fine. It should be so much more. It should be way better than it actually is. That's the thing with the Texas offense. It should be you have the quarterback, you have the wide receivers, you've now presumably added a running back, and these guys aren't gonna block anybody on the offensive line because they are so bad because they need so much help. So with that being said, I think the 2026 Texans are going to be very similar to the 2025 Texans. I don't know what CJ Stroud's future looks like, but he should be the Texans quarterback because I'm curious to see if they find another guy or they find somebody better. I know Stroud had a bad end of 2025. I understand that. I recognize that. Not great. I think a lot of the Patriots, games at the end did that to opposing teams' quarterbacks. I think we have questions about Justin Herbert and we have questions about CJ Stroud. Fair enough. D'Amico Ryans is a great coach. He has a great defense. He just needs to find an offense and find an offensive line that can hold and block guys and create holes in the run game. Once he finds that, then we're talking. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not completely sold on the Houston Texans. I'm going to discuss now Dan Campbell of the Detroit Lions. He is in his sixth year in Detroit. He has a winning record in 4 of his 5 seasons with the Lions. He has 17 wins behind Wayne Fontes for most all time in Lions history. You could argue that the Lions missed their window after losing to the Niners in the NFC Championship game and then losing at home in the playoffs to Washington 2 years ago. They missed the playoffs last year, but they are still talented. They brought in Drew Petzing as the OC, he was formerly Arizona's OC, and it's an intriguing hire. I don't know if it makes the offense any better. Um, I don't know what he's going to scheme up for what he's calling. The Arizona offense last year was such a mismatch of just whatever that I don't even know how much of it you can take and apply. And this concept that they use in Arizona, they're going to bring in Detroit. No idea, maybe. Uh, I'm not giving up on the Lions though being playoff or even Super Bowl contenders. With Dan Campbell, I still believe in the Lions, and I'm probably a fool for doing so because I think there's a shot these guys miss the playoff again, and then we're having real serious questions. The offense is talented. The defense, I think, has you know some potential. I mentioned last week I'm really excited to see Aiden Hutchinson uh play for the Lions again this year. Hopefully healthy. I just I don't want to give up on the Lions because they were a really cool story. They were really fun to watch. They were exciting. I still think they can be. I think last year again they finished 9-8, so they didn't even have a losing record. It's just 9 wins is not good enough to make the playoffs anymore. It seems like so you know, are the Lions going to win 10 games this year? Maybe. They have a tough-ish schedule. Their division's tough. If there's a guy I trust to figure it out for them, though, it's Dan Campbell. And I think that's why he's one of the most impactful coaches in the league. Is he will find a way to make this work, but at the same time, he's brought the Detroit Lions into competitiveness, which is crazy for a team that historically in my life has been, you know, on similar playing grounds as the Cleveland Browns or the Las Vegas Raiders. For a team that has struggled for a lot of its existence, you know, Dan Campbell's been one that's brought them into relevancy. And they've had spurts of relevancy, but never this prolonged, it seems like. So I'm rooting for Dan Campbell. I'm rooting for the Lions. I hope they I mean, I want the Seahawks obviously to win the Super Bowl, but I hope it all works out with Campbell and the Lions and it doesn't burn in flames. I don't know that it will this year. I don't think it will. I think the floor is too high for them for it all to burn down, but I could be completely wrong. So we'll see. And then I'm gonna discuss Nick Sirianni. But let me just double check here. I'm gonna go back because I have taught 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, Sirianni's my 10th coach, the 10th most impactful coach in the league this year. I think maybe question mark, not necessarily 10. I don't know. I just wanted to talk about the 10 most impactful coaches this year. So Sirianni has made the playoffs every year he's been coach of the Eagles. Last year was a chaotic season. Didn't do anything to help Sirianni's stock. He's on his fifth OC in as many seasons. I don't even know who is the OC on the Eagles this year. Let's see if I can pull that up. It's not Kevin Patello. Actually, a fun game would be can you name Sean Mannion? That's right. He's the Eagles offensive coordinator. Was formerly with Green Bay, former Oregon State quarterback. Back in the day. Um, they drove AJ Brown out of town. Who knows what Sirianni's relationship with Jalen Hurts currently is? If things go bad in Philadelphia, which it feels like it could, considering the vibes, and I feel like I've talked about this every week, and I'm going to keep talking about it because it seems to be I think it's a big issue for Philadelphia. They have no Jeff Stoutland, who is their former offensive coordinator since going back to Chip Kelly. Like, I don't know, man. I'm not sold on the Eagles. I'm not sold on this offense. I think things are gonna get worse before they get better. Now I'm happy to be proven wrong. I'm as long as the Cowboys don't win that division, I guess. But they have Fangio doing his stuff on defense. They have Sirianni doing whatever the hell he does on offense. I guess Mannion is gonna be an upgrade at offensive coordinator. Again, it's Jalen Hurts and Sirianni's fifth OC in 5 years. I don't know, man. I'm so not sold on the Eagles. I'm not sold on Sirianni. This is a case of like a guy who could be making an impact in this league derogatory. I think there's a shout this guy could actually get fired mid-season or late in the year. Like I feel like things are gonna could go so bad this year. I also just, think that Howie Roseman is not afraid to make, big swings. I feel like if he thinks he can do something to improve the team, he's going to do that, and that might include firing the coach. Excuse me. So that's why I'm not exactly hyped on Nick Sirianni. I'm not exactly hyped on this Eagles team. I think they'll do some interesting stuff on defense. I need to see a little bit more creativity and a little bit more explosiveness from an offense that should frankly have more explosiveness. I know the O line's getting old. Landon Johnson, not Landon Johnson, Lane Johnson's talked about retiring. I don't know what Landon Dickerson's situation is. Like, I think these guys are getting old. At least on the offensive line, I am slightly intrigued to see how Makai Lemon does. I did draft him in one of my dynasty leagues. Maybe he does well. I don't know. I don't think he's replacing AJ Brown. It's like when it's like when when the Eagles brought in AJ Brown and they traded or they drafted Traylon Burks. Traylon Burks, remember him? The Titans drafted him because they thought he was going to be a good AJ Brown replacement, and he just wasn't. It just never worked out. I kind of wonder if there's a little bit of that with Makai Lemon. I think Makai Lemon is maybe a little bit better of a receiver, but listen, Sirianni, this can go really well or really poorly, and I am putting my money in really poorly. I don't see Hurts leaving. I just see Sirianni getting, getting his pink slip and being told to leave because this is gonna be. I don't want to say disaster. I just feel like the vibes are off. There's. I should do like a vibes rankings where like these guys. I just something's off. Something's not right with these guys. Maybe hasn't been for years, and they still managed to win a Super Bowl in the meantime. But I feel like it's gonna be bad before it's gonna get worse before it gets better. So there you go. That's my next Sirianni talk. Other coaches I think you should watch this season who I don't think are gonna be as impactful, but I think you should keep an eye on. Jim Harbaugh, Mike McDaniel, new OC, former the Dolphins head coach. I wonder if the Chargers are kind of going all in this year. They like what they have. They have the coaching to make up for maybe any sort of talent deficiency. I am so excited to see what McDaniel does with Justin Herbert. I am a nerd in that regard. Another coach I'm going to discuss is Jeff Halfley a little bit. Um, I don't know who these new Dolphins are. I frankly don't love the Dolphins this year. The Dolphins might be my sicko team of the year. I don't know that I like Malik Willis. I don't know that I love throwing a bunch of money and having him start, but maybe he's better than the last guy. That's the hope, right? Um, I don't know that they know what they're doing. They're rebuilding. They're trying to figure it out. They got a new GM. They got a new coach. Maybe Halfley will be good. I don't know. He had some decent stuff going in Green Bay. I think Green Bay also just drafted really well and added Micah Parsons. Like I think they just added good talent on defense. So I don't know how much of that success on the Packers defense you can give to Jeff Halfley. Brian Schottenheimer is the coach in Dallas, and I think the Cowboys have really been bland. They've been really boring. They have not done anything really exciting, anything really worth mentioning or discussing, certainly offensively. On the field. They traded Parsons, and that was obviously its own thing. On the field, nothing really exciting or worthwhile or thrilling about them. I think at least this year, they have some stability. They got a new defensive coordinator, and I am blanking on his name, but they fired Matt Eberflus, which is good because he was fucking terrible. Uh, the Cowboys should be, I think, a solid, stable. Like, I don't think they're gonna do anything fancy this year, and maybe that's the sell is that they're just a solid run of the mill team that they just go and do their thing. They got Javonte Williams at running back. I would love if they had a not to say that Williams is bad. I just wish they had a little bit more at running back. I think Dak is probably going to have another good season. I think the receivers are going to be pretty good. Their tight ends are probably going to be pretty good. The defense is probably going to be fine. Like I'm curious to see with Schottenheimer. Similar, I talked about it with Kyle Shanahan. It's for Schotty, what's his next step? Where does he go from here? How does he zag? What does he do to make the Cowboys more interesting, more exciting? Um, I don't know that the Cowboys are really all that interested in competing for a Super Bowl. That just does not seem to be the MO of Jerry Jones and the team. They prefer to be the cash cow than a Super Bowl champion. This is not a roster or a team that feels like it has Super Bowl aspirations, especially compared to Seattle, the Rams. Um, you could even say the Packers, I guess, maybe. Um, the Broncos. Like I don't know. I want to just see the Cowboys take another step, like get into another gear, and I just don't know that they're going to, but we'll see how that goes. Robert Saleh, he formerly the 49ers defensive coordinator. Previously, before that, he was the Jets head coach. He is now the head coach in Tennessee. Tennessee is such a fun team, like just trying to map all that out. I'm gonna be talking about the Titans in a few weeks. I think in a few weeks for doing a segment maybe on them. But the Titans are kind of a fun team to try and map out and plan. They have a lot of different things going on. They just re-signed Peter Skoronsky. He's their guard that they drafted in the first round a few years ago. I think Sala, he's got some work to do to make that defense, a serious defense, especially in a division with quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud. And I don't know how people feel about Danny Dimes, but like it's not going to be easy on the defensive side molding that. But I think the nice thing with Tennessee compared to the Jets, there isn't necessarily the pressures. There's not going to be the media scrutiny that there is in Nashville compared to New York. So I'm curious to see how Salah does and how he builds this team and how competitive they are. His offensive coordinator in Tennessee is Brian Dable, which I'm not quite sold on. I see the vision, I just don't necessarily agree with it. But the big thing again is Cam Ward. They have Cam Ward at quarterback. Can Dable and the Titans make Cam Ward a legitimate, serious quarterback? Who knows? And can they pair that with a real strong defense from Robert Saleh? Who knows? We'll see. Just interesting coach to watch. And then finally, I want to discuss Kevin O'Connell. He's the Minnesota Vikings head coach. He's got another quarterback battle this year. It sounds like it's going to be Kyler Murray taking the job out of camp. Um, Kyler, I saw somewhere, yeah, he like Kyler has maybe one healthy season and in the last 4 or 5, like played a full season worth of games. So you're going to see JJ McCarthy at some point. I think that's like maybe that's obvious, maybe it's not. It's not just going to be the Kyler Murray show this year. You are going to see JJ McCarthy at some point. I'm curious to see if Kevin O'Connell has anything different or anything more for McCarthy. I'm not selling, like I probably sold a little bit of my McCarthy stock this offseason. I still think there's something there. I still think there is something with JJ McCarthy that you can use. Maybe not with this team, but I mean, the Vikings last year were like, what, an 8-win team last year with horrible quarterback play? And I think you got to attribute that to the coach. So I'm curious to see now he's got Kyler Murray, who I think is the Mendoza line of a good quarterback. Of like, you know, can you win with this? Like, is this a Super Bowl winning quarterback? I think Murray is like the Mendoza line of like I can see it. I don't necessarily think it's every year, but I think it's like one of those F1 races where all of a sudden like you know freaking Esteban Ocon wins the Hungarian Grand Prix. You know what I mean? Like there's some shit that has to happen for that to happen, but I think it could happen. So in Minnesota, can Kevin O'Connell get the most out of Kyler Murray? Can he get the most out of JJ McCarthy if and when he starts? And can he make the guys happy? The Jordan Addisons, the Justin Jeffersons, all the guys that for this to be a successful operation. Can he make those guys happy? And can he, make those guys, you know, happy and wanting to be there and wanting to stay in Minnesota? So there you go. There are my 10 coaches who I think are going to the 10 coaches who are going to most impact the NFL season, uh, including some other guys. That was great episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you very much for checking it out. Next week we're going to have part 4 of our season preview. We're going to be talking about some games that we're excited to watch. So that's going to be a great episode. Check that out. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel at SYP Pod. If you haven't already, you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I don't know if that's a subscribe or follow thing. Do whatever you need to do so you get the podcast in your feed. We're gonna have more episodes coming out here shortly. We're gonna have more stuff on the way. Um, follow us on Instagram at SYP Pod. Check us out TikTok SYP Pod. You'll find all the links to our stuff below. So check us out. Tell your friends. Thank you again for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. We'll be back again next week. And until then, peace out.